in this deal, we would lose a proud Canadian company. We would lose a loss in our international leverage in the potash sector, a loss of our marketing agency along with the goodwill and contacts and leverage it provides, and we would transition from being price leaders to price takers. I don't see how there's a net benefit there then in terms of the strategic interests of the country. We have expressed these concerns in meetings and publicly, and we've had a lot of quick answers provided to us to solve. Why not just change the royalty structure? That's been offered as an answer. How would we do that exactly? Agrium and Mosaic have made $6 billion worth of decisions to create jobs and attract investment in this province based on the current royalty structure. The current royalty structure is the reason why there is today $12 billion in potash expansion underway in North Saskatchewan, creating thousands of jobs. It is a good royalty structure for that reason, because it is paving the way for growth, the growth that you prize and that I prize, that our province wants for Saskatchewan. So are we then to have two structures, one for BHP that has its marketing model, and we've got to keep Mosaic and Agrium whole, I would say? We know the effect on businesses and on your investment climate and on your economy when you have royalty shock, when there's a bunch of changes in the royalty structure. We don't want to do that. Right next door, we saw what happened as a result of that. When a company makes a multi-billion-dollar decision to invest in a mine, that company requires a very clear understanding of the costs. That's what the Saskatchewan Potash Producers Association have said about this issue. Another quick answer we've received to our concerns is, well, just get some undertakings. The company will just make some promises then. Promises about the head office, promises maybe about Campotex, promises about the revenue situation for the province. But I don't find much solace today, ladies and gentlemen, to be derived from the historical record of companies involved in takeovers and of promises being kept, or of Investment Canada holding companies to their promises. Market conditions can change, interest rates change, and before long companies come with a request to have something adjusted or something changed here in our province. In 1994, ironically, the Potash Corporation came and asked for changes in the dilution of the golden share that was established in the 80s, and it was granted in 1994. According to the Globe and Mail, 10 years ago, an antecedent of BHP Billiton PLC made a promise to locate its global headquarters for base metals in Toronto relative to an acquisition of Rio Algam, copper producer. Less than a year later, the federal government gave permission for that promise to be broken, and after the merger that created the new company, that base metal headquarters moved to Houston, Texas. This promise that was made, and for good reasons, I'm sure, from a corporate standpoint, it needed to or was broken, and those jobs went to Houston. There are other examples. Xstrata paid $18 billion for Falconbridge. In the summer of 2006, the federal government extracted a promise that no jobs would be cut, and the promise was broken. And Vale of Brazil made commitments to maintain staffing levels after purchasing Inco. In March of 2009, 463 jobs were cut. I'd say the promise was broken. Rio Tinto promised not to cut jobs or operations when it took over Alcan. Hundreds of millions of dollars in cuts to scheduled upgrades to smelters in Quebec and BC occurred then thereafter, and 300 jobs were cut, including 18% of the head office at Alcan. I know that there is this suggestion out there that, well, promises can be made, but you'll pardon the government of Saskatchewan or anyone in this province if we're a little bit concerned about them being kept. We can't build schools on promises. We can't reduce taxes on promises. We can't pay off the debt on promises. We need greater assurance than that on something as important as this. In 1904, Prime Minister Laurier declared that the 20th century would be Canada's century. I liked what he was thinking about, but he might have been about 100 years too soon. I think this could be Canada's century if we get it right. Today, the world is facing two important questions of food security and energy security. Canada has the answer to those questions. In prolific production of agriculture, of food, and an amazing profile and inventory of natural resources. I believe there is a vision for our country that beckons us. A vision that would have us take our rightful place, leading a world that needs answers to these questions on food security and energy security. It's a vision of a country then that, through the benefit of this natural resource development and these exports, would reinvest in the next economy, in the knowledge economy, in the new economy, and continue to grow in the interest of future generations. But to do that, we as Canadians, all of us, we need to have that vision in the first place. And we will need the requisite courage required to fulfill that vision. We will need the courage to make tough decisions. And this has been a tough decision. Decisions like saying to an eager world that, while we welcome international investment, there are certain strategic resources that call for circumspection, that call for discipline on our parts as Canadians, that call on us to keep an eye to the future. We see a place for Canada in the world and a big role for Canadian companies, situated in a world that wants what has been bestowed upon us by Providence and in such abundance. Ladies and gentlemen, we have done our due diligence exhaustively. We have asked the questions. We have made our assessment of this foreign takeover and what it represents. We believe there's a risk for a net loss to jobs in the country. We believe there's a significant risk to net loss to revenue for the governments of Saskatchewan and Canada, revenue that in our province would require deficits or tax increases or program cuts or some combination of those things. And our assessment also tells us that the takeover will result in a net loss of our strategic influence around the world at a time when the influence of our province, and I think our country, should be on the ascendancy. So, in the interest of jobs for Saskatchewan families, in the interest of the quality of life that we prize that's funded by revenue to government, in the interest of the place of our province and our country in the world, we must say no to this hostile takeover. And let me just say this. The answer no is not unprecedented. It has been given in free market economies around the world. Here's an example from Australia, the home of BHP Billiton. When Shell bid $10 billion for a controlling stake in the leading company developing Australia's offshore natural gas reserves, an answer came from the enterprise-friendly government of Prime Minister John Howard in April of 2001, and that answer was a respectful no. Not yes with conditions. It was no. Australia's then Treasurer Peter Costello said it was in the country's best interest to have these offshore reserves to be, quote, unequivocally managed and operated and marketed for Australia. Why in the world should we deserve anything less than that in Saskatchewan and in Canada? Why wouldn't we make that same kind of a decision so that we can ensure these great natural resources that we have are managed and operated and marketed for Canada and for Saskatchewan? And by preserving just such an environment, we are saying yes to a bright future for this industry. We say yes to the national interests of our country. We say yes to fulfilling the potential of our province and of our nation. We say yes to controlling the resource and our future. We say yes to Canada's century. We say yes to Saskatchewan's century, because a world that needs food security, a world that needs energy security and innovation, that world needs a strong and vital Canada. Let's be that Canada for the world. That big hope and grand vision requires, on this occasion, a modicum of courage and one little word: